Hello and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host Greg Payne coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Hey everybody, I am super happy to have Alexis Wynn on as our guest for this conversation. You guys are going to find her to be just an amazing young woman, and she has got some fascinating and interesting stories about her grandfathers. You guys are going to want to make sure that you go to the show notes and check out the websites and Facebook groups that Alexis has for selling paparazzi jewelry. This is fun jewelry that doesn't contain any nickel or lead or anything in there that's going to cause some allergic reactions. So, like I said, go to the website, check out the show notes, and check out some of the fun things that Alexis is doing. Now, on with the show. Hi, Alexis. Thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I really enjoy taking this opportunity to hear about you, hear about your grandfather and the relationship that you had with him. I'm looking forward to hearing how this relationship, you're actually going to bring the average age of the guest down quite significantly by being on this podcast.
That's awesome. Well, I'm super happy to be doing this. I've never done anything quite like this before, but I have some awesome memories of my grandpa and both my grandpas, kind of.
Well, as we get started with this, why don't you go ahead and introduce your grandfather for us? Give us a little bit of background. Tell us a little bit about his history, what you know. And then what we want to do is dive into maybe some of your earliest memories with your grandfather.
Sure. So my grandfather's name is Richard II. So obviously his father's name was Richard. And he had a Richard III son who had a Richard IV, possibly? Maybe. It's possible. There may be 4 Richards out there. But his last name is Holden. And when you think about the nickname for Richard and Holden as a last name...
There's a lot of teasing going on.
Yeah. Which is interesting because he did go by Dick when he was younger. And I'm like, I don't know how much he got teased about it, but wouldn't fly today. He goes by Richard.
Sure.
He's lived in kind of Bay Area, California for years and years and years. I don't know if he grew up there. I don't exactly know where he grew up. Yeah. I don't know much about his past.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, and that's not super uncommon. That's one of the things that we've been finding out is that a lot of people sometimes don't know the histories of even their grandfathers, especially those grandfathers that were born around or grew up during the Depressions.
Yeah.
Not a lot of record keeping, a lot of moving around, so unless people really take the time to sit down and focus and, hey, tell me about elementary school and things like that.
Right.
It really doesn't come up very much.
Yeah. I know that he has had a newspaper route ever since he was like 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
And he only stopped doing it a couple of years ago.
Wow.
So even through, teenage years, adulthood, married life, he has grandkids. He's still doing it. He still did a newspaper route for the longest time.
Wow.
And he just really, really loved it. And so he just kept doing it.
Do you think it was a combination of exercise and just meeting the neighbors and that sort of thing? Or?
I think he liked connecting with the neighbors because whenever we would go for walks outside or drove past with him in the car, he'd say, oh, there's so-and-so's house. And, they're having a daughter that's not doing so well right now. Or he would just tell us all these cool stories about the neighbors. And so, yeah, I think it was just kind of like that social aspect. It got him out of the house more. And he was an early bird. He really liked waking up early and getting his day started. And so the newspaper route was an easy way to do that. Okay,
that's interesting. You normally hear of everybody transitioning out sometime in high school.
Right.
You start picking up a regular part-time job or you start picking up a full-time job, but that's really kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, and no matter what kind of jobs he had throughout his life, he always also had the paper route.
Sure. Now, what was one of your earliest memories, or what do you remember as a young girl?
So I remember a lot of family traditions with that side of the family especially.
Okay.
My family lived about 15, 20 minutes away when I was growing up until I was 10 and moved to Utah. And so we had my mom's mom in town. So we saw her a lot, spent a lot of time with her. And then we had my dad's parents in town, which is the grandpa that I'm referring to, Richard.
Okay.
And so they did a really good job of keeping the family together and having everyone hang out together, basically. So every summer we would go camping as a family, and our family from Oregon would come down, and family from who knows where in the country. I don't know. I was under 10. We would all get together in Northern California and go camping every summer for like a week. And my grandparents would cook. My grandpa made this really good juice. It's like he had plum juice and he had pomegranate juice, and he'd like mix them together. And so there was always just like a huge vat of delicious juice anytime we were with them. And then the day after Thanksgiving, we would always go Christmas tree hunting. So there was like a Christmas tree farm on the side of a mountain, and we'd all go up there together and pick our Christmas tree. And I don't know if you've seen A Christmas Story.
Yes.
But you know their Christmas tree, how it's like super wide, has the really colorful bulbs with like the tin foil around it. That's
Right.
exactly how my grandparents' Christmas tree was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it always had those huge bulbs. It was always very, very big and wide, tons of like family ornaments on it. And so we would hunt for the Christmas tree, and then we'd all separate, of course, to our houses to decorate our own Christmas trees. We would do a progressive dinner.
Okay.
And so like the appetizer would be at my house, and then the main course would be at my aunt's house. The dessert would be at my grandparents' house, and we'd all just travel there together. And it was like the coolest thing. So I think my grandpa and my grandma did a really good job of having traditions in our family that we just did every year to keep us all connected.
Sure. So it sounds like it wasn't just the normal Thanksgiving, Christmas traditions, but it's
Right.
Summertime, here's where we're going camping this year. We're going to be gone for a week. And probably also maybe some things around the 4th of July. Or not. I'm just throwing that out because that tends to be a big family weekend gathering type experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was he the one that was planning that, or was he and your grandma the ones that were really planning those activities?
Yeah, especially before they got older, they were like the main planners of all of these. Every time we went out to see Christmas lights, every time we got together around Christmas time or things like that, they were like the main planners behind that. So
okay. Now, what was it like living so close to your grandfather?
I thought it was awesome. I didn't really know. I mean, I kind of had the two different experiences. I had one grandfather who I lived really close to. I saw him on a weekly basis. Lots of family around all the time, getting to see him grow older and stuff like that. And then I have my mom's side where I didn't even know my grandfather until I was 10.
Okay.
And then it was like limited experiences even after that. But he would try to come, give us like a birthday present. And he worked right next to Village Inn, and they sell pies. So it's like a diner, kind of like Denny's, but they also sell like whole pies. Okay. And he loved those pies. So randomly throughout the year, he would just come over with a pie. Sure. So, having that different experience of one where I see him on a weekly basis, I know him very well. We have a really good relationship. And then the other side, I mean, it's awesome. Having that generational difference gives you a really big perspective. Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things that is important to remember too is because I never grew up with a grandfather that was close by. Mm-hmm. And then my other grandfather, I think, passed away when I was about 2. I never really knew him.
But the fact that the one grandfather was trying to reach out and stay connected and making an effort anyway, you may not have had the closest relationship.
Right.
But I think it's important that grandfathers try to extend themselves out to the grandkids, even when they live across the country or another country.
Yeah.
And just kind of keep that connection there, because you never know when at some point a grandchild's going to need that relationship, or when you're going to have a moment where you can really step into a grandchild's life and help them with, maybe it's a college decision.
Yeah.
Maybe because the grandfather has a certain experience that they can step in and say, oh, well, this school and this program versus this school and this program, or, work life choice or whatever that is. But if your grandfather's not making that effort to stay connected, whether it's just bringing a pie or trying to bring a birthday present every once in a while and saying hi, you're probably never going to reach out to that person.
Right. Yeah. And it's true. I think, grandparents should, even if that effort is small, because that one grandfather, I know he would have enjoyed being in our lives a bit more, but his wife at the time didn't like my mom especially. And so she tried to keep us separated, I guess. And it's like, well, we live in the same town now. You can't really do that anymore.
Right.
And so just like that effort that he did put in, we saw that. And we saw that, you know what? The past may have happened how it happened. We can't do anything about that. But what he's doing now is most important. And what he's doing now is trying to keep that relationship open. So that meant a lot.
So many families, whether, the divorces or separations or just family dynamics and background stories, and I think it's important that grandfathers try to keep that line of communication open when they can. And certainly there's different family dynamics and everything else that come into play. But when you have the chance, making sure you're at least reaching out every once in a while and doing what you can to keep the relationship. I mean, it's going to be what it'll be. And some folks have really great close relationships and others not so much. And some people don't have any relationships. But the more effort that you can put into it, I think the bigger the payoff is with just keeping that family connected and making sure the grandkids know that they're loved, that there's somebody else outside of the four walls of the house that love them and will look out for their interests.
Yeah, definitely. And I think technology nowadays makes it a lot easier to stay connected. You don't have to just write letters, although I did have an aunt where the only way she talked to us was through letters, and I still loved them and read them. But we have Skype and FaceTime, Facebook. My grandpa Richard is so into Facebook, which is like, for the younger generation, it's kind of like, oh man, my grandpa's on Facebook, but I love it because I get to see kind of his views on the world, I guess, through what he reshares, what he posts, how he comments. I get to see him, being active and know that he's okay, obviously, because he's posting on Facebook. But we also have like a Marco Polo, which is like video texting, basically.
Sure.
And he's on a couple of different family groups, and he'll come on every now and again and just say, hey guys, just want you to know I love you. And so it's kind of nice because my dad's generation, every holiday you call the family. Yep. And I'm so bad at that. I'm horrible at calling even my parents. Like my parents know that I love them. Right. And they know that I would do anything for them. And if they ever need anything, they can reach out to me, and that if I ever need anything, I'll reach out to them. But unless I'm in like dire need, it escapes my mind. And my dad was really good about calling his parents every single holiday, but I'm horrible at it. And so knowing that, okay, he's seeing what I'm putting on Marco Polo, he's seeing what I'm putting on Facebook, that, he can know that I do still care about him, even though I'm absolutely horrible at calling him on the phone. Sure.
Well, and that's the great thing with technology, is that there's different ways to reach out and connect with people.
Yeah.
So I definitely, being a grandpa and being an old guy myself, I remember that you didn't just always pick up the phone and called people, especially out of your area code, because that's a long distance call. You're getting a different charge on your phone bill.
Yeah.
And so it was always wait until after 6 p.m. To make a call. Even when I lived in Northern Virginia calling DC, we would still wait until after 6.
Yeah.
Let alone calling cross country to Boise, Idaho to say hi. You know, with Marco Polo, with Facebook, FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, all these different things, it's a little bit of what works for the grandkids and what works for the grandparents.
Yeah.
A lot of us are on the Facebook. You know, and part of it is too is that I think a lot of the grandfathers hit when MySpace was coming out, when the emails were coming out, when all that stuff, it just seemed like every 6 months there was something new.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of grandparents find one that works and settle on it, and is like, until they disconnect the servers, this is what I'm using. You know, I'm not learning something else.
Oh, yeah. I remember when my dad was teaching my grandpa how to send an email and how to connect to the internet and stuff like that. And, it was just a struggle. But once he got the hang of emails, he was the king of forwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. Everybody's got to hear this one.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't really develop a filter for that stuff until after a little while.
No.
You know, and the weird thing is too is the forwarding is also a little bit of, hey, I'm thinking about you and I think you're going to like this joke.
Right.
And so as annoying as it is sometimes to get 5 or 6 different forwarded jokes, you also have to step back a little bit and go, I'm getting these because my grandfather loves me and wants to share them with me.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, initially it's a little bit of like, this stuff is
Grandpa.
Why am I seeing all this stuff? But then at the other time, if you take just a little bit of a step back, it's like, oh, they're sharing because they love me.
Yeah.
And they thought it was funny to them and they wanted to share that with me. So yeah, we got to cut parents and grandparents so a little bit of a break sometimes on these things.
They're trying. They're trying.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what about your middle school years? How did the relationships with grandparents change? Because, you know, you being a new mom and stuff, you're going to go through it where your daughter is super cute, nice little toddler. The next thing you know, she's going to be in elementary school.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the pressure is going to be on you to keep up with the latest fads. The next thing you know, she's going to hit middle school and she's going to be in this weird trap about trying to be like high schoolers and 20-year-olds when she's 13.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
Those relationships all change because all of a sudden being grandpa's little princess or, you know, whatever the cute names and things are, all of a sudden that's not so cute anymore. It's like, no, I'm a strong, independent woman. Exactly. and the relationships do undergo a change a little bit. And so what are your memories of your relationships during middle school?
Not a ton, just because we had moved to another state. And so we didn't get to see them as often. We weren't able to go to camping every single summer. But I do remember when I went camping, how old was I? I think I was 11 or 12. I had started my period for the first time. And it was the family camp out. So that was kind of a horrible week.
Of course.
Horrible. But now thinking about it, like, he didn't treat me the way he had always treated me. He did treat me like I had grown up a bit. And I think that's kind of the hard thing for parents to do and even grandparents to do, is you kind of have to treat your children differently based on their ages, or your grandchildren differently. You can't always, treat your adorable grandchild, sorry, I was just thinking about my daughter, like they're a baby all the time. They are going to grow up, and you kind of have to respect that. That's what you want them to do. You want them to grow up. You want them to be independent. You want them to be an adult. And so if you're treating them like a child, even if it comes from a place of love, they're not going to respond well to that. But if you treat them, okay, you want to be an adult? Okay, well, I'm going to start treating you more like an adult.
Yeah.
Which can also be hard, especially if they're 13 and no matter what you say, they want to go against it because they're 13. Mm-hmm. I think as they grow older, they will respond well to that and respect that. Like, my grandfather didn't always treat me like his little princess because I grew up, and he started treating me like the young woman that I was, like the adult that I was. Mm-hmm. And so I really honor and respect that because I needed that. Not everyone in life sees you as how you see yourself.
Right.
If you see yourself as an adult, but everyone else in the world sees you as a child, that's going to cause a lot of problems. And so, yeah.
Do you think you had more responsibilities on those camping trips? And
yes.
Where, and the reason I bring that up is I was interviewing this woman, Dee, and her grandfathers lived close. They were on a farm, but when she hit those middle school years, they expected her to work like the boys on the farm. I mean, she was slinging hay bales and she was doing a lot of things. Now, there were also a lot of tender moments of her going fishing with her grandfathers and having some of that one-on-one time. But
yeah,
she found that the grandfathers did a good job of going, oh, okay, you're middle school. Guess what? I need you to get in here and clean this trout or do these dishes, or I need you to do this, where you weren't asked to do those things when you were 10. Now, some of that is because you're 10, you can't do them. But then the other thing that she brought out was that she remembered that was, I think, similar to what you're talking about, was the grandparents kind of acknowledging that, hey, we've got a young adult on our hands. She's not a little kid anymore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do remember being on that camping trip and they're like, hey, come help me with breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever the meal was. Help me build the fire, help me pass out food to everyone, or clean up and do the dishes afterwards. And I remember at the time I was like, ugh, because I had cousins who, didn't really help. They might have been asked to do something, but they weren't as obedient as my sisters and I were. So that was kind of like, well, they don't have to do it. But at the same time, yeah, exactly what you mean is they're not treating me like a kid who they just have to keep away from the flames because it's too hot. And suddenly they're like, no, I need you to help me. And
did you find the let's say the quality of the interactions with your grandparents and your grandfathers at that time kind of went up? It changed a little bit more because it became more of a, as you were maturing, it became much, it's never really an equal relationship, but it's much more, like you were saying, they're relating to you as a young woman now.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can have some deeper discussions and share some things, whether it's just ideas on how the country should be run or how the world's going to look in 50 years or whatever those are. But those can be really important to young people because we have somebody that's listening to us. We have an adult that's listening.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because when I was younger, being with Grandpa was, hey, let's go, watch him work in his workshop, or we're just going to have dinner and he's going to talk amongst the adults about whatever they were talking about at the dinner table. And I'm just going to try to choke down the stuff I don't like. But as I got older, we did start having more actual conversations. What did I think about things? And what are my feelings about this, that, and the other? And, oh yeah, I was watching this great TV show last night. Even, something as simple as that. But
sure.
To a middle schooler or something, having those points of commonality and being able to, have those conversations, feel comfortable enough to express your opinions and thoughts, and have someone else who, they're not your parents. So they may be more approachable, depending on your parent relationship, because you have to have that line between parents and kids of
Right.
I'm the parent, you're the child. But with grandparents, that line can be a little bit more swayed. They can be more your friend, right? Someone who won't judge you as harshly as your parents might. And so you can feel comfortable talking with them about things that you may not be comfortable talking to your parents about yet.
That's a huge point. And something that has come out in a number of different conversations is that when grandparents and grandfathers in particular take the time to have those relationships, they do become a little bit more of a trusted advisor or a little bit more of that person where you might open up about a few things more to your grandfather than you would to your mom or your dad. Mainly because your grandparents are really there to love you and support you. I mean, they'll point out hazards along the way, but they're not there to judge you and try to mold you the same way that maybe parents are. So I think that's just, that's awesome you had that experience. And then it's just a great reminder again that, if grandparents don't put in that time, then you're not going to get that really beneficial, deep conversation and connection with the grandchildren as they're starting to mature.
Right.
So now one thing, as we jump into your high school and college years, how did the relationship change even further with this?
I mean, I think it was kind of the same as my middle school years, just because my high school years, I didn't see him at all.
Okay.
Just because we stopped going to summer camping, or at least we hadn't in a very long time. And it was just every time my dad called him on the phone, I would talk to him for a little bit. And so the relationship was still there. I still very much loved my grandfather. But we really didn't have too much actual connection or deep conversation when I was in high school. But there were a few things that I learned from him when I was younger that helped me when I was in my high school years, in my adult years. Okay.
And how's the relationship, and how are things now that you've have a child of your own, and how have you had a chance to enjoy the fact that you've got a great grandpa, and or has he taken some of that in and has realized it?
Yes, it's so fun. So he got remarried, and his new wife is awesome. Also very much on Facebook, but she'll watch like my live videos I post on Facebook. Okay. And just comment, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, hey, tell Grandpa I love him. And she's like, of course. And they live in St. George now, where my parents and all my sisters and their families live. I'm the odd duck. I live across the country. And it's not for any reason. Like, I didn't need to get away from my parents. I wasn't trying to avoid any family, anything. I'm just the weird wanderer that likes to move.
Sometimes life takes you where it takes you.
Right. And so they have family dinner with that side or with my family every week. And we went out there to bless my daughter in our church back in August, and it was so much fun. You could just see his eyes light up when he saw her, and he's like, hi, it's great grandpa. And oh my goodness, he was so cute. And of course he's getting older. Sure. He's a great grandpa, and usually that comes with a bit of frailty. Yep. But he was just so funny and so cute with her. And I mean, she was 3 months old, so she couldn't really respond back yet. But yeah, if ever we're on FaceTime or anything, he'll just pop his head in and be like, hi, Poppy, and be all cute.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Now, as we start to wrap up this discussion, are there any favorite stories, any favorite memories that you would like to share?
Yes. So my grandpa loved gardening. He may still love gardening. I don't remember. I don't know. Haven't talked to him in a little bit, but He has this house in Vacaville that he's had forever. Literally, they bought it before my father was born. That's how long they've had this house.
Wow.
And so all of my memories with him are tied to that house in some way, because it's just been the focal point. And there used to be this orchard behind the house, and he knew the people that owned the orchard, and so we would be able to go walk through it. And I can't remember what kind of orchard it was. I just remember there were trees and there were beautiful blackberry bushes. And so he'd take us out there and we'd go and pick blackberries and eat them right off the bush. And they were so delicious. But in his little backyard, he had a garden, and it was always so lush and so beautiful. And he just took such pride in that garden, all the work he put into it. And so every time we'd come to visit, hey, come see how the tomatoes are doing. And look I have a sprout of asparagus or something like that. And so he'd walk us through his garden and show us all of the different plants that he was working on. And I just loved, like, sometimes it was like, ew, there's bugs out here and it's icky. You know, as you get older, you start getting weirder about that kind of stuff. But it was so much fun to see him talk about the plants and their stories and the experiences he had with them. He took a lot of pride in everything he did. He's very, very handy, which helped my dad out a lot because he taught him how to do a bunch of stuff. You need a plumber, you don't need to call someone, just call my dad. And you need someone to fix your car, cool, call my dad. And he learned all of that from his father. So that was really awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's talk about you a little bit with some of the projects and some of the things you have going on, because what I want to do is make sure that we help out friends of the show and put links to different projects people have. So what do you have going on?
So I am a paparazzi consultant. Paparazzi Accessories is a jewelry company. All of the jewelry pieces are just $5 because their kind of motto is you don't have to spend a ton of money to look like $1 million. They have a little saying that says, $5 jewelry may not change the world, but those who wear it will. And so they're all about, you know, empowering people to take on their own business. And it can be as simple as selling a $5 piece of jewelry. All the jewelry is lead and nickel free. So it's really helpful if you have like sensitive ears or if you have allergies. Even some of the hypoallergenic jewelry has lead or nickel in it.
Okay.
And so really, really gentle on the skin. And new pieces come out Monday through Friday, at least 10 to 30 new colors, new styles of necklaces, earrings, bracelets. We even have some kid jewelry that's $1 each instead of the normal $5. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
I was going to ask you, what's the typical age range of the people that are purchasing the products?
I was going to say purchasing or selling. Because it's all sorts of age ranges. It really depends on the consultant, because when you start selling, of course, your customer base is kind of your friends and family.
Sure.
So if you have a lot of older friends or older friends who have a lot of older friends, then your customer base is going to be a little bit older, whereas younger friends, but it ranges.
So it sounds like the jewelry, though, could be worn by young women and older women.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a lot of different styles. They even have different like series of jewelry. So if you go on the paparazziaccessories.com website and go to create your showroom, it'll give you a little quiz to show you what your jewelry style is. And what pieces paparazzi has that go with that style. So it has stuff for all ages.
Guys, what we're going to do is we'll put links to everything that Alexis has going on, and we'll make sure that you guys can get into contact. Go to the show notes. We'll have all the links in there. And then if you're looking for some jewelry for a granddaughter, your daughter, your wife, is a great place to start. I've seen some of the catalogs and some of the different options on here, and you're sure to find something for them. So if you're looking for, some jewelry and a good place to go, check out these sites, and we'll look forward to helping you out any way we can.
Yeah. So. We even have some men's jewelry. We have men's bracelets, necklaces, and rings.
Okay, cool.
So, men and women.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciated this time.
No problem. Thanks for asking me.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Wow, what a great interview. I really enjoyed talking with Alexis. You guys probably picked up on that. She is just a fantastic person. The thing that really jumped out at me was how her grandfather that lived close by to her in Utah would make time to drop in on birthdays and would make time to drop in on occasion with a favorite pie to share with the family. Now, circumstances and what's going on with family dynamics may limit us in some ways to having contact with people, especially our grandchildren, but it's always great to make the little efforts and little steps to stay connected. It may not be the deep, meaningful relationships that you want at the time, but it allows for those relationships to grow and expand in the future as opportunities arise. So that was one of my biggest takeaways there. If you have some takeaways that you'd love to share with me, please go to the website, leave me a comment, or go ahead and shoot me an email. And my email, for those of you that don't know, it's greg@cool-grandpa.com. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please share it if you did. And remember to be awesome today. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.